You're locked into a lot of things you can't change. Weather, traffic. Hey, stay in your lane! Your wireless carrier's latest price hike. But you can unlock a better way. Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile and save up to $600 a year. Switch to the $25 a month unlimited wireless plan. No contracts, no price hikes, and you keep your phone. Stop being locked into their games. Unlock the savings at boostmobile.com/unlock. Based on average annual single line of payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months on the Boost Mobile unlimited wireless plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Fresh air, longer days, a chance to reset. This season, let therapy be part of your spring cleaning, clearing mental clutter, shaking off stuckness, and building something better. Grow Therapy helps you get there. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits you, not the other way around. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Grow accepts over 100 insurance plans. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/start now today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/start now. growtherapy.com/start now. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Business is booming. But you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think spreadsheets were just part of it. Ugh. But real-time cash flow? Wow. Invoices that chase themselves? Even better. Books that automate? That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No spreadsheet in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search Xero for your free trial. Conditions apply.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello, my name is Paul Barnett, and you are listening to the Great Coaches Podcast, where we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership, and so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find ideas to help all of us be better leaders. On this episode, we welcome back the great coach, Lisa Alexander. Lisa was the coach of the Australian Netball team known as the Diamonds from 2011 to 2020. During that time, she oversaw gold medal success at the 2014 Commonwealth Games and 2015 Netball World Cup, as well as silver medals at the 2018 Commonwealth Games and 2019 Netball World Cup. We first interviewed Lisa in June 2020, soon after she had finished with the Diamonds and just as the podcast was starting. And since then, she's been a great supporter of the podcast, encouraging us, offering feedback, and introducing us to some other great coaches along the way. Recently, however, she started working with Code Sports, interviewing some of the top netball coaches in Australia, as well as a recent deep dive with Eddie Jones. The interviews go a lot further and deeper than what you often get in the mainstream media when coaches are interviewed about their teams and players. And so we asked Lisa to come back onto the podcast to talk about what she's learned through that series of interviews. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now please enjoy our interview with Lisa Alexander.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Lisa Alexander, good afternoon and welcome back to the Great Coaches Podcast.
G'day, Paul. It's great to be with you again and to be asked back on your very famous podcast.
I don't know about very famous, Lisa, but you are one of our biggest supporters, and I can't thank you enough for the support you've given us the last 4 years.
Well, thank you. And I think it's good because we're talking about coaching and coaches. And, I love talking coaching and showing the world, what a great bunch of people we are, really.
Well, let's start there, Lisa. I follow your social media feed. It's always provocative and has something interesting. But most recently, you've done a series of interviews with great coaches on the new site Code Sports. Fascinating listening. We're going to get to some of the ins and outs of those conversations through this interview. But something easy to start with. Can you tell us what surprised you most in these conversations you've had?
It's a really good question. I guess what surprised me most was the fact that once I had the coaches comfortable in the fact that I gave them the questions beforehand, and that's always a bit of a thing, particularly in netball. But none of the coaches asked for any of them to be changed, and they were all really keen to share their backstory, I think, what makes them tick, and also their coaching philosophy, but also particularly in netball, what they do outside of their coaching and how their lives are, rich and full, families, all of those things, their journeys that they've had. So I think the off-court part was terrific, and I felt very grateful that the coaches did illuminate that for the listeners. And I got some smiles and some laughs out of them. That's always good.
Were you surprised by how balanced and, dare I say it, normal the lives of some of these coaches seemed relative to, I guess, some of these other coaches in sports that seem to be a little bit more obsessed?
Yes, I do, but it's not unusual in netball because I guess we've grown up in our sport having to manage lots of different parts to our lives, whether it's working as well, because many of coaches in netball are volunteers, and as you're becoming a coach in netball, you have to do it for the love of it, not necessarily the money. And so every one of those coaches that has made it to the top level is always surprised when you talk about money, because they're doing what they love and they're very grateful for being paid the amount that they do get paid. I don't think it's enough, of course. I always think, our netball coaches should get more. But I think they're all, so grateful to be able to do the thing that they absolutely love doing, which is, helping young people to develop and get better at what they do, and all within a team environment. And netball's like, physical chess. It's, we can say it's moving, parts around the chessboard. So it's actually a great intellectual exercise as well.
I've been going along to watch the Giants with my daughters, and I can testify to just how fantastic it is live when you watch all the strategy play out in front of you. But Lisa, you talked there about coaching philosophy, and it was the first question I think you asked most of the people you interviewed. Can you tell us about some of the things you discovered when talking to people about their philosophy?
I think what I discovered is actually how similar they all are. Really, at the end of the day, they're doing it because they want to help people improve and young people to get better, not just on the netball court, but off court. I think that was the thing that I was most pleased to hear, was that everyone had that thought of developing not just the athlete on the court or the field, but they really wanted to help improve their lives off the court and help them to see other opportunities and ways that they could grow as a person. Because I think everyone seemed to agree that if you had that off-court balance, it seemed to translate into really good on-court performances. And this wasn't always the case. So this has been something that's grown into the vernacular of coaching over, particularly since I started with the Diamonds back in 2011. It was almost like a dirty word to speak about off-court or, athlete well-being, whereas now we know it's so important, particularly for the mental health of young people.
And that change has just occurred in a decade.
It really has. I think before then, I think there was a realisation back then that we haven't got an endless supply of athletes. We haven't got an endless supply of population growth either in Australia. And, back in my day, I don't know about you, Paul, but it was pretty much dog eat dog getting your way up the talent ladder. And it was, who could sort of yell the loudest, or I don't know, just people seem to be picked out if they could just keep going and always show up. Whereas I think these days you haven't got that same talent pipeline in terms of numbers. So you've really got to look after the people that you are developing into the athletes of today. So there's a lot more care and attention placed on how we look after the athletes that we bring into our talent pipeline, and then what we provide for them afterwards as well, that transition back into careers or, other education opportunities for those athletes. So there's always that mindset of, what we're doing to bring them in, and then also what we're doing afterwards as well.
I think it's the biggest thing I've learned through these interviews is the power of care, or the focus on care. If you'd asked me before I started interviewing great coaches, my top 10 leadership words, I'm not sure care would have been in there. Whereas now it's front and center in the approach I try to bring to my work. So I agree. And I think that spillover from sporting world into corporate life is taking hold as well, particularly when it comes to care as a way of unlocking potential.
Yeah, and certainly the more that you understand the person that you're working with on that journey of self-discovery, as well as, in ensuring some improvement in them as both people and athletes, it's that requirement to be focused on what it is that you need to bring to that relationship. And, you can say that, that player, they can't be coached, but Joyce Brown would often say to me, well, Lisa, you do have to coach that person. That's the challenge of coaching at the very top level, is to unlock that potential. So if I haven't been able to do that with a particular athlete, I feel like that's a failure. But, that is something that you have to cope with sometimes. It might not be you in the coaching team that brings out that great ability within a player. It might be somebody else. It might be the assistant coach. It might be the strength and conditioning coach. It could be the team psychologist that brings out that or unlocks that potential. And I think as a head coach, you've got to be humble enough to understand it may not all have to come from you. It could be someone within your coaching team that unlocks that potential.
Lisa, can we go from unlocking potential to stakeholders? Because you had this amazing interview recently, a couple of weeks ago, with Eddie Jones, a real scoop, and Eddie's story is there, and I think most people listening will be aware of it. But listening to the interview, it made me wonder what you think the best coaches do when it comes to balancing the needs of backroom stakeholders.
Wow, that's such a good question. And, interesting that, I would say in the past, Eddie would have been one of those people that I felt like he did a really great job of that from the outside. But I really understand now that, he's like anyone else in that coaching level, that, things can come undone through sometimes no fault of your own. If somebody else, you've aligned yourself to a certain part of a board, and then the rest of the board decides to get rid of that particular person, then, you're in trouble, so to speak. And I think that's what Eddie found when, working with the Wallabies recently. And, you can't always control that. You can be informed about it as much as possible. I know that when there was an issue with our board back into, I think it was 2017, I got advice from my own mentor, Bill Sweetenham at the time, who I think out of all the people that I speak to is probably the most politically savvy in terms of understanding the stakeholders and what's in front of him. He just said to me, you have to take the line of being on the fence. You can't support one versus the other, because if you support one side, then what if they get the boot and, the other side digs their heels in. So, I think it's really important for coaches to be politically astute, but not to always be so involved that they end up being caught on as, collateral damage, so to speak, when there is a board spill. So I think it's a matter of knowing what's happening in the board and having some good information about it, but making sure your alignment is not in a place where it's overdeveloped on one side and not on the other side. I think you've got to be able to, be very, very fair and equitable around the associations you have across the board. But you can't ignore it either. That's the other thing. You've got to, especially at that very, very top level, you have to know what's going on. So you need to, if you don't want to be involved, you need to have someone who is, covering your back in that light, someone that you trust.
I want to talk a little bit in there. You talked a little bit about alignment and language and making sure that you're connecting with people. But listening to the people you interviewed, it was also effortless. Like they seemed to just answer off the cuff. You said you sent the questions, but they were very engaging. And I sort of wondered, I know that you do a lot of work with community teams as well, and you've got a background as a school teacher, but I wondered how the language of elite level coaches might differ from that at lower levels.
Look, it really doesn't at the end of the day. I think we can get into high performance babble speak, and my husband always hates acronyms all the time. What does that mean? HP and SN and SH and whatever it is. We do get into that technical language of a particular profession. And I think what I did in the interviews was trying to unlock that technical. Sometimes you can have a conversation with someone that's so technical that anybody else listening to it couldn't understand. So my goal was to show those coaches in all their holistic glory in terms of how good they are as people and coaches. So to go into too much technical language and kind of like the old boys club or the old girls club wouldn't have fulfilled, our brief for those interviews. So I think it was good that I also took that, as the interviewer, I took down that technical language down to a more understandable level for everyone to listen to. And, I got enormous support from my editor. Therefore I could hopefully make the coach relax and actually give a little bit more of themselves, not just the technical coach facade as such, that you have to be sometimes in different roles that you play as a head coach.
It definitely came across as they were trying to engage with you more as a peer, not necessarily a head coach. And I found the language very easy to engage with. And that comes from someone who does know what a GK and a WA stands for in netball.
With that, it's also the fact that I think there was that respect between the two of us. I think sometimes when coaches are interviewed by journalists, and I'll give you that example of Owen Slot, who interviewed Eddie, with the Times, there seemed to be this agenda, whereas I made it really clear, and I had conversations with the coaches beforehand, that I was wanting to show them in the very best light possible, because I wanted to show Australians particularly, but people from overseas have watched them as well, how great our coaches are at what they do. And so that was my goal, and I made that very clear. And so they felt comfortable about that, and also they know me as well. Nearly all of the coaches know me personally. So they knew that I was coming from a good place. So they didn't need to put up their protective armour. They could give of themselves.
I can tell you that I have to work doubly hard on that, because the people I interview, I can't meet them as a peer. And so I'm always trying to find a way to get them to give a more honest and authentic answer. And it is difficult. They're on guard. They're worried that their words will be misused or potentially played back, I think, to an athlete that might render a relationship a little less weaker than it was. So you were able to cut through that quite significantly, and I think it showed.
Yeah, well, we did have a prickly point with one of the coaches who didn't want to go back too much around, the people leaving the club. I think Dan would be quite comfortable with me saying that. But what it did is it gave Dan an opportunity to show the positive side of, yes, there were a few people that left the club, but look at what we've got and look at how exciting it's going to be. And it actually has played out that way. They're now, third on the ladder. They're in the finals and, they've beaten every team, I think. So, they've got as much opportunity to win a grand final as anyone else. And that's been with half their team going.
I especially liked Dan's interview. I thought it was a really good one, actually. I thought it was...
Yeah, and he had, and he's one of the younger coaches in our group, but I think he's, just doing a magnificent job of what he does and how he communicates his narrative around the team. It's, it's fantastic.
Lisa, in your interview with Tracy Neville, she talked about the challenges of starting a new team from scratch. And
pretty amazing.
It was pretty amazing. And she's got, of course, an amazing background. Her whole family have had success in the sporting world. But listening to Tracy talk and you engage with her, it made me wonder what you see as the most common mistakes new leaders make when they take over a team.
I think the most common mistake they make is not finding out and doing a lot of research beforehand, or even coming in and just ensuring they spend probably at least 6 weeks finding out who's who in the zoo, and getting to understand really the politics around the club, and also doing their own little review for themselves about whether this is the right place for them. So those sorts of things are really important. But I think the advantage that Tracy had is that she could come in with a really open mind about what she could create with that team. And, I think what we've seen as a result of that has been a club that's immediately captured the hearts of half of Melbourne, which is terrific. So they had a very clear purpose and vision about what they were going to do. And I think Tracy was the perfect coach to drive that, because that's very much part of her DNA as a coach back in England with both Manchester Thunder and also with England. So knowing kind of that your purpose aligns with the type of purpose and vision that clearly Craig Hutchison and also Shea Brown came up with the Mavericks, I think has enabled Tracy to really put her stamp on the club clearly from the start. One of the things that she did, which was a smart move, was to get an assistant coach who knew the Victorian pathway inside out. That means the talent pipeline in Victoria. And she kind of Nick Richardson knows who's who in the zoo. So having someone like that as in a key appointment is really important as well when you're first starting in a new club. So the two of you at least together can get the netball side of the club operating to its best immediately. And that's what was needed with this team. I mean, they've had their challenges, enormous challenges. And even I remember saying to Tracy, she didn't realise how far it is and how long it took to go from one side of Melbourne down to Geelong on a Friday afternoon. And so simple things like that, like logistics things and organisational things, can become real obstacles for new leaders when they come in. So it's always good to have someone else who's a real operations logistics type of guru to help you, I guess, smooth the transition from a mechanic's point of view as well.
Business is booming, but you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think unpaid bills were just part of it. Ugh. But batch payments? Wow. Automated accounts payable? Even better. All in one place. That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No bills in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search Xero for your free trial. Conditions apply.
Hi, this is Farnoosh Tarabi from So Money with Farnoosh Tarabi, and today I want to talk to you about Boost Mobile. Quick money tip: stop paying a carrier tax. If your phone bill feels trapped in a pricey plan, this is your sign to unlock savings. Boost Mobile helps you reset your spending with the $25 unlimited forever plan. You can bring your own phone, pay $25, and get unlimited wireless forever. And that simple switch can unlock up to $600 in savings a year. That's money you could put towards paying down debt, investing, or something that actually brings you joy. Those savings are based on average annual single-line payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months on the Boost Mobile Unlimited plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
So Tracy was able to transfer her skills from England to Australia. It was the same sport, but it's a different geography. And I'm wondering, and I know that, and I'm bringing this question up because I know that you've written about it extensively, and I want to hear your thoughts, I guess, on tape. But how transferable are coaching skills across different sports and perhaps even industries?
More and more these days. Of course, they are in industries as well. We know that CEOs can be, they could be an accountant, they could be a scientist, they could be a teacher. Really, it doesn't matter what their technical profession was. At the end of the day, they have to learn how to be a leader of a business or an enterprise of some sort. And so their job is actually to lead and manage people to produce the best outcomes for the business. And that coaching process applies across business, in my view. So that's why CEOs can move from profession to profession. Certain professions seem to lean towards different, enterprises, like lawyers maybe and accountants seem to be able to manage, quite massive differences in what the company actually produces. But at the end of the day, I think it is the way that somebody is able to communicate their vision, stay disciplined to their plan and their creation that they're wanting to have, and having the ability to then come back to it and make it accountable for the people that are in the different areas that they're leading at the time. So I said, well, why don't West Coast really ring me up and say, do I want to be the head coach of West Coast Eagles? I know they won't, because it's just too much of a gap in terms of a leap of faith that people have in how people operate as coaches. I know myself, I could coach a team sport in another sport, because I would make sure I put the people around me that would make up for the areas that I wasn't as strong in that particular sport. But I still understand strategy. I still understand psychology. I still understand how to bring a team together. I still understand high performance sport. So there are many elements to high performance coaching that are transferable across sports. It's actually there's less that's not the same as how much there is the same these days.
And there are some examples emerging of people being able to do it. Apart from Ted Lasso, we have people like Neil Craig, who I know you know quite well, who have been able to transfer across.
Yeah, and also Rick Charlesworth as well, of course. He has had a background in cricket and has, then transferred from playing in hockey and coaching hockey to cricket as well. I think he's a classic example of how you can do that. Even though he didn't play cricket to an Australian level, I'm certain that he could coach the Australian cricket team if he was asked to do that. What puts people off is the history and the politics of what happens in sport is the thing that actually stops people taking that leap of faith into putting someone in charge who's never coached that particular sport before.
How would you get around one of the main barriers I would see, and I'm thinking as a CEO here, is that you have to challenge people. So you've got to challenge the supply chain person. You need to challenge the finance person, the salesperson. And if you haven't got the deep technical skills, sometimes that challenge can be a little bit more difficult. How would you get around something like that?
Oh, certainly by having a mentor who is hot in that area, who you can refer to. It's sort of like having your own little board of directors. I'll give an example. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach, okay? And I know enough about it to have a good idea and understanding of it, but I'm not an expert in it. So if I need to be able to challenge my own strength and conditioning coaches, I go to a mentor in that area. And I have a mentor in strength and conditioning, and I talk with him about that. And he then educates me around the questions that I should be asking. Now, he will have been across, whether it's a program or an idea of how, we're going to go about our strength and conditioning part of the plan. And he will then, help me to have the meetings and understandings together with my strength and conditioning coach about what we want to deliver to the Diamonds or our under 21s team or whoever it is. So it's having that ability to have people who you can trust and rely on, who can give you that information, forecasting, making sure you're ahead of the game. They might have a worldview that you don't get time to be across, and they certainly do that research and understanding. And as long as you've got that and you've got the ability to understand what they're saying and distill that into an idea of how you want it for your own business or your own sport, I think you can challenge people to be at world's best. And then they've got to explain to you why they're not doing something or how they're doing it differently. And you as a CEO can make that judgment according to your own understanding of how the business is going to be moving forward.
Lisa, what have you learned? I mean, you've got these mentors in your life and you're clearly very good at listening and asking questions. You wouldn't have been able to span the geographies, the sports, the teams, the organisations that you have had success in if you weren't able to do that. But what have you learned through your own observation and the people you've interviewed about the line between listening but not getting stuck in the push for consensus?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well, because it's the tough, hard ask. It's I think it's something you practice, and one of my coaching, I guess, colleagues who's one of the gurus of education of coaches in Australia is Dr. Cliff Mallet at the University of Queensland, talked about the metacognition of coaches and likened it to the decision-making that pilots make or surgeons or whatever. And it's that ability to distill lots of information together and then come to and have your own decision-making framework based on, your current areas of importance and priority in a business, and then be able to cut through and make a decision based on that. That's a very technical approach, but what I find is you do need to speak to people and communicate within your own business first before you make a final decision on something. And I think spending that time on doing that and having people feel ownership of that decision as well. And sometimes having those debates and discussions about things and then having an alternative decision as a boss or a CEO or a leader or a coach is okay, because then the team feels like you've empowered them to add to the information in front of you, add to the data, add to your understanding. But still, at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable from a holistic point of view that the decision you're making is in the best interests of everybody. From a holistic point of view, because companies are not data points, they're not budgets, they're people, and people have to be the ones that enact the changes that you are making decisions about. So I think if people understand that you're coming from a very authentic place around that, then they're quite comfortable if you make a decision. And of course, you're the one that's living and dying by that decision as well, not dying as such, but you're staking your reputation on that decision. You make those, you practice making those decisions over your whole life. Everyone does. They just don't understand how much they do that in their lives. And, everyone will have a slightly different approach to it. But at the end of the day, it's that considered decision-making that's really important. And in coaching, sometimes it has to be done really, really quickly. And it's when all of your experience comes together in your mind and body that you've made the right decision or the right call at that particular time.
And I think learning to live with the discomfort of that decision or the doubt that comes with that decision is also something that characterises great coaches.
It is, and most of them are prepared to deal with the downside as well. The downside can be very difficult and hard, but sometimes you have to understand even when you've given your absolute best, you will still lose or something will go wrong. But you've got to have that ability to, dust yourself off and get back onto it and remain disciplined to your plan unless it needs to change according to the, current data that you have in front of you. So, and it's being authentic in that practice, I think, and being consistent in that practice of consulting others to make your decisions.
Lisa, when we interviewed you, it was almost 4 years ago. Can remember it so vividly. I was living in Prague back then.
You were?
You talked about this fascinating, you called it a trademark, and you described it as the Sisters in Arms. And it was something that you came up with Ray McLean, I think was the gentleman's name, with the diamonds, to really define the culture you wanted. It was an amazing idea, and it stayed with me for a long time afterwards. I've only ever discovered a couple of other examples of people doing that out of 200 plus interviews. It's a very small percentage. But have you discovered any other examples of people using a similar narrative to describe the team environment they wanted to create?
Yeah, definitely. I think thankfully nearly all of our netball coaches will have a way of, I guess they call it their game plan of playing or their philosophy of playing, and it's the Firebirds way or it's the Vixens way. This is the way we play. And it'll also be married into the behaviours that they expect of the players on and off court. So they may not call it a trademark, but they'll call it whether it's a purpose or a vision for their season. They might call it a theme for their season. And, particularly someone like Dan Ryan will have that for Fever as well, where they've got that bigger picture in mind of really what they're trying to achieve together. And it's a call to arms. It's a call to the team that, if the things are going a little bit wrong at a particular time, we just need to get back to our basics and understand what it is we're doing and why we're doing it together. So it's always that call to come back in. I call it the call them in strategy, even when I was teaching, and just the reminder to your class or your team about what it is you're trying to do and trying to do together, not only as a teacher and pupils, but a coach and a team, or even if it's a CEO in an organisation. We always need reminders about things. People forget. It's just our human nature. It's not always embedded in us. In fact, that's one of the tests I think Ray used to give to us sometimes, is he would test us whether we'd stuck to our trademark in terms of, doing a induction of our new players. That would be one of the things he'd ask the leaders, have you inducted such and such, Kim Jenner, into the squad? And Caitlin Bassett would say, yes, I've done this, this and this. So it's part of that ongoing process of, it's not just a word up on a board. It means much more. It's got to be revisited. You've got to go back to it because it could need changing according to what's happened in a particular situation. When you win a World Cup versus when you lose a World Cup, you come back to it. It's solid. It's a foundational part of what you're wanting to achieve with a group. And so there could be a number of different ones. I know some of the clubs I'm working with at the moment, they've got some different little acronyms that they use as well. And, they're all very individually specific to that. The All Blacks, one that comes to mind is, we always clean the sheds, meaning, we always make sure we leave things in a really excellent place before we leave that. And so that's that idea of legacy. The Diamonds had that as well, where they wanted to make sure they left our program and what they, achieved together in the best possible light before they then moved on, and the next group of Diamonds comes into the sisters. They still use sisters in arms, which is nice.
I mean, the only other, I found a couple of ones, but I found a great example from the Melbourne Rebels, actually, another Australian team, and they, the women's rugby team, and they talked about be a rebel like her, and they'd centered everything around this whole idea of be a rebel, break rules, move forward, do things differently. And I thought it was very powerful. But it is an interesting idea, but it's got to be authentic. And I think you found one with Sisters in Arms. And I remember when you described it, you were saying, well, what does it feel like on the sideline when you achieve your aspiration? It feels like with Sisters in Arms. I thought it was still one of the best ones I've ever heard.
Yeah, it is. And it was because it was connected mind and heart as well, that the Diamonds immediately got emotional when they thought of it, because they could think of themselves on the side of the court, arms around each other, singing the national anthem. And that's when Laura Geitz came up with, well, why don't we go for Sisters in Arms? So it does take a little bit of time to get to that connection, and it might not come even in the first season. It might be all of a sudden during the pre-season of the next season, oh, there's the word that we need to start using. And it's organic. It's not something you can impose on someone.
Lisa, I might just finish, if I can, by talking about leadership. I started this podcast because I was fascinated by the leadership traits of great coaches. I still think they are the best leaders I've ever experienced in my life. And through the interviews, I've come to see that they define leadership as influencing people so they thrive, which is very different from the corporate world, where I think the most common definition of leadership is an allocation of scarce resources against a strategic goal. Something like that, something that sort of is long-term and about scarce resources. But if I was to ask you, you've now spanned different worlds. We were talking earlier about the work you're doing with a couple of companies and so forth. But what do you think all leaders can learn from great sports coaches?
I think they can learn two things. Number one, possibility thinking, so that you're always thinking about what's possible, what could we do? So they're great problem solvers around that, and always have the glass half full approach to things. They need to have that because they're inspirational at the end of the day. The best leaders are inspiring. And their words are their actions. So what they say is what they do. And I think they're the two things for me that count.
Lisa, it's always great to chat with you. I love following along with your social media posts. I'll put all the links in the show notes to where people can find you. You always have a provocative view, and as we've heard today, you have a very deep view on leadership when it comes to the world of sport. So I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, you have been listening to the great coach, Lisa Alexander. I hope you enjoyed Lisa's insights into elite level coaching and found a couple of ideas that you can bring back to your own team for discussion. Some of the ideas that resonated with me were the importance of support staff when it comes to finding the right person and approach to unlocking someone's potential. How when it comes to managing stakeholders, you have to be careful to remain impartial despite any allegiances you may have to the person who brought you into the organisation, and the connection she has found between the best leaders and the inspiration they generate to ignite actions in others. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like Ross Pinder, who after listening to our interview with Andre Lemanis said some really useful and practical insights and takeaways in this episode. Thanks, The Great Coaches Podcast. We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. And so if you have any comments or feedback, please let us know. And of course, if they're positive ones, then let a friend or two know as well. All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
Shipping, billing, admin, payroll, marketing. You're managing all the things. So why waste time sending important documents the old-fashioned way? Mail and ship when you want, how you want with Stamps.com. Print postage on demand 24/7 and schedule pickups from your office or home. Save up to 90% with automated rate shopping. That's why over 1 million small businesses trust Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com and use code PODCAST to try Stamps.com risk-free for 60 days.
Hi, this is Farnoosh Torabi from So Money with Farnoosh Torabi, and today I want to talk to you about Boost Mobile. Quick money tip: stop paying a carrier tax. If your phone bill feels trapped in a pricey plan, this is your sign to unlock savings. Boost Mobile helps you reset your spending with the $25 unlimited forever plan. You can bring your own phone, pay $25, and get unlimited wireless forever. And that simple switch can unlock up to $600 in savings a year. That's money you could put towards paying down debt, investing, or something that actually brings you joy. Those savings are based on average annual single-line payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months on the Boost Mobile Unlimited plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Business is booming, but you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think unpaid bills were just part of it. Ugh. But batch payments? Wow. Automated accounts payable? Even better. All in one place. That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No bills in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search Xero for your free trial. Conditions apply.